Good evening, or good day, it all depends, and welcome back to the Impossible Iron Man channel. Today, we're analyzing the upcoming new feature for Hunt Showdown, the Stalker Beetle. It's been fairly controversial on social media and has had a lot of mixed opinions. So we're going to break it down here and do a deep analysis of how this will impact Hunt as a whole. And I'm doing this for both PC and console, as there will be slight differences on how it will impact both of them. Now, before we get into too much commentary about it, I'm going to go ahead and pause this highlight clip in the background, which has nothing to do with the Beetle, and we're going to look at the clip from the developer commentary that showcases what exactly it looks like to use the Stalker Beetle. So we'll watch that first and then dive into it.
Try to talk as little as possible because
maybe on the first one and then on the second.
Yeah. Just explain.
So let's look at the facts. The Stalker Beetle is a consumable, refilled only via cocoons found across the map. These spawns are sparse, however, from what I understand, but are often found in pairs. It can be recalled and reused, as well as traded by causing it to fall. Enemy hunters can pick this up as well as teammates, however. It is fragile and easily killed, but it is fast-moving, making it tough to hit, though it does have momentum, so you can learn to lead it. It's about as loud as a sprinting hunter, so you can hear a sprinting hunter from the same range as the Beetle. It can only see via darksight and is capable of pinging, though this version of darksight is much better than a typical hunter darksight. However, it does not use darksight boost, which is nice. It'd be kind of annoying. It shares traits like Vigilant, Poison Sense, and Blade Seer, but not things like Serpent and Necro. It can be detonated, causing poison and bleed, medium bleed to be specific, dealing 5 damage to hunters, and has an explosion radius of 5 meters. The intention behind this is to blow open shutters and doors. A good example is you can throw it through the window. Of note there, throwing it through a window will not cause the beetle to die, but it can't fly through a window. You have to be in the throw animation. So you can throw it inside and hit a barred door from the inside of a compound, blasting it open, creating another entryway for you to breach. There's other creative uses like this, I'm sure, opening crank doors or closing them, for example. On the flip side, I'm sure, as everyone wants to know, you can take out people with it, and this has actually become more of a concern from test server data than I had initially figured. It seemed like more of a meme, but being that it works with Poison Sense, long ammo sparks becomes a big issue here. More on this later. Also of note, the explosion cannot trigger red barrels or yellow barrels. However, it can trigger B barrels, as well as mines, whether it be concertina mines, alert mines, or what have you. And it does alert AI. They won't actively go after it, but if you fly it through a hive swarm, it's going to die. In addition to triggering AI, which can be a handy distraction, it also triggers clues and boss layers just as a hunter would, which can also be an interesting distraction. It has a range of 150 meters and will fall if you go outside of that range. It's meant to stretch across compounds as they average about 150 meters in size. And it is also capable of blocking extraction. More on this one later, but this has also been a note of some controversy. And it can be disabled via choke bombs. So if you want to get out alive, you might want to throw some chokes around the extraction. It's not just for blocking long ammo anymore. So what is Crytek looking to accomplish with the Stalker Beetle? It's intended to prevent camping and stalemates. This ended up being geared more towards preventing stalemates than anything else. It's essentially a siege tool, allowing you to break those moments, especially in higher MMR ranges, 5, 6 star, where everybody's just sitting still, trying not to make noise and trying not to give the other side information. This will effectively force rotations and position changes, as well as enable some pushing to a degree, since it does poison and cause bleeding when it explodes on a hunter. It will increase the pace of gameplay and prevent those moments where everybody is just watching paint dry, waiting for somebody to make a noise. It also helps against camping to a degree, but how well it does that is more of a matter of discussion, of which we will get to my opinions on that here momentarily. It was advertised largely as an anti-camping tool, but as I said, I believe what it's actually accomplishing is being a stalemate breaker, which isn't a bad thing inherently. With all that having been said, let's move on to the discussion portion of things. Firstly, how will this impact console differently than PC? Let me preface this by saying that everything from here on out is more subjective than objective. We started with the facts and the intention behind the Stalker Beetle, so now we'll talk about, firstly, how this will impact the different metas. Now, what do I mean by different metas? I've always been of the opinion that undebatably the reigning king of PC is, and for the foreseeable future will be, long ammo. Crytek has done their best to begin curbing this issue, especially with the upcoming changes in addition to the Stalker Beetle. While we're not going to get too far into that, namely increasing the price of certain snipers like the Mosin and the Lebel Marksman, things of that nature, trade adjustments, making some more expensive, etc. But even with those changes, long ammo is still going to reign supreme on PC. But I will always be of the opinion that console players have a shotgun meta as opposed to a long ammo meta. Is long ammo still effective for a lot of the same reasons on console? Of course it is. However, there will always be the discrepancy that PC players are going to have better aim with mouse and keyboard than console players are with an analog stick. And knowing this, shotguns are far more prevalent in the console meta than long ammo. So with this information in mind, how will the Stalker Beetle influence the console meta differently as opposed to the PC meta? My short answer is not a whole lot, but there are some key differences to note. One of the first that comes to mind is the movement speed of the Stalker Beetle. At full acceleration, it is very fast, and as mentioned earlier, it's just a simple fact that PC players with mouse and keyboard will have an easier time hitting targets than console players will. Now, this is balanced out by the fact that, as I said earlier, I am of the opinion that console leans more heavily towards shotguns due to this aiming discrepancy. So there will be more players inherently running around with buckshot, penny shot, etc., spread weapons, in other words, to deal with the Stalker Beetle than there will be on PC. But PC will have an easier time being able to lead the target once everyone starts to become familiar with the acceleration rate of the Beetle. So whether this will become a rampant issue on console is a matter for debate, but I don't foresee it becoming a huge issue but I will see for myself once it hits live console servers. Beyond that, it will be up to live server gameplay to distinguish any other important differences between console and PC play. This segues us, however, into how the Stalker Beetle will affect the overall hunt meta as a whole, regardless of what platform you happen to be playing on. I am of the opinion that the Stalker Beetle will create a new normal for hunt. I think it's going to turn gameplay on its head and will absolutely define the way hunt is played going forward. Now, while I'm okay with aggressive changes and brave implementations like the Stalker Beetle, as with any sort of aggressive change, it does raise some concerns. The first one that comes to mind is the fact that, as of the making of this video, the Stalker Beetle is capable of blocking extractions. In my opinion, this is not a good thing. It flies in the face of what it was advertised to be as an anti-camping tool. Or, I suppose I should say, consumable. The scenario that I see occurring quite frequently is as follows. Long-range extraction camping, now with blocking capability. A team can sit up to 150 meters away and still block the extraction with a Stalker Beetle. The partner of the Stalker Beetle simply has to hold a sniper rifle and wait for the bounty team to leave safe cover in order to deal with the Stalker Beetle so that they can get out. Now the sniper takes out whoever moves out of cover to deal with the beetle and covers the body so that the partner can't leave. The person with the Stalker Beetle recalls the beetle and pushes the extraction while the sniper covers them. This gets even more complicated to deal with once you start thinking about trios and the fact that multiple people can have Stalker Beetles. So even if one gets taken out, another one can simply fly in and continue to block. This does have minimal counterplay with things like choke bombs, poison clouds, and what have you, but let's be honest, did extraction campers really need another tool in their arsenal? On the flip side, the Stalker Beetle still does have some important uses surrounding extraction gameplay. It is capable of triggering the horses and the boat on extractions, of course, and while I don't think it should be capable of blocking them, I still think that the alert feature should remain. In addition to this, any experienced hunt player knows the issue of lightning delay. What I mean by this is the lightning that shows up in Darksight when you go to look at somebody that is holding a bounty token. There is a delay on this effect that essentially makes it to where you can't always locate their precise location. And even if they're sitting still, it still moves around them a little bit. While I understand the purpose for this, it is a subject of debate on whether or not that the delay lasts too long. I think it does, and I'm sure many players have encountered the scenario where you check the lightning both on the indicator on the map and via Darksight over and over and over and over again so that you have information on your opponent, and then all of a sudden, even if you've checked it 30 seconds ago or less, sometimes you go to check it again, and the team that you've been trying to force a fight with and try to get the bounty from is already halfway to extraction, and you're screwed. Because the delay is just so long that unless you actually hear them leave, they could be long gone, and yet the indicator still shows that they're approximately somewhere in front of you in the compound. The Stalker Beetle really helps out with this issue on multiple fronts. One being that a teammate that is, of course, hopefully in good cover can maintain more of an aerial view of some of the exits around the compound. A lot of people typically like to park in between the closest extraction and the boss layer, and oftentimes, at least a smart team will head the long way out and escape due to the delay. But this way, this kind of forces some kind of engagement over the bounty tokens as you can use the Beetle to monitor the exit on the opposite side of the compound, depending on where you're sitting. That way, you actually have far more reliable information on if your opponents try to run in the other direction, actually giving you a chance to catch up to them instead of, finding out too late that despite checking the lightning, that, all of a sudden they're gone and you had no idea despite doing everything in your power to keep an eye on them. So the Stalker Beetle will go a long way towards alleviating that situation from happening. Because it always just kind of feels like a waste, especially when you come all the way across the map just to have the team slip out on you and have that lightning delay screw you. It also helps with compounds that are more susceptible to third partying. Compounds like Elaine and Sons, Catfish, things of that nature come to mind, where you're going to have, due to the nature of the compounds and the layout of the terrain, you're simply going to have a lot of teams sitting in the surrounding area just waiting for something to happen. The dark sight on the Beetle is efficient enough that you can fly it way up into the air and surveil the surrounding area to not only make sure that the bounty team isn't escaping, but also the surrounding tree lines and terrain to make sure that you don't get third-partied when you move to intercept. Now, moving on from that, I believe the Beetle is going to encourage play in the extremes. Now, what do I mean by that? By that, I mean long ammo and shotguns, without much in between. Like it or not, the Stalker Beetle is going to be a constant factor to consider going forward. And the best ways to both defend against and utilize it are long ammo and shotguns. As far as shotguns are concerned, so long as you're using buckshot, penny shot, etc., it's simply the easiest way to take down the Stalker Beetle. Less of an issue on PC, of course, as we discussed earlier, but for console, it's going to be important. There's also the added strategy that the Beetle can act as sort of a breaching tool for shotgun players, especially not only scouting out information on what type of weapons someone inside a building is using. Obviously, it's going to be the boss layer most of the time, but not necessarily. That will give you info on how easy it's going to be to breach said compound. But with the explosion being that it deals, or I should say inflicts, poison and medium bleed, it's going to function as a possibly even a more reliable breaching tool than the flashbang. Poison inhibits vision, and people tend to panic once the bleed triggers. So you can send the Beetle in, hit a hunter guarding a door with it, and then immediately run inside with shotguns and mow everybody down while they're waiting for their vision to come back and be less obscured, or while they're trying to stop the bleeding so that they can reliably deal with what's in front of them. And on the other side of things, for long ammo, there's the strategy that was discussed earlier, where you can either hit somebody with, say, a Sparks, and then finish them off with the damage from the Beetle, or you can do the opposite, hit them with the Beetle first, and then use something like Poison Sense to track your target and finish them off from range with long ammo. There's also the added tactic of scouting inside somewhere with the Beetle and having your partner use some kind of long ammo and ping where the hunters are inside the building for more reliable wall bangs. All of this, unfortunately, makes compact ammo and medium ammo less appealing. And to be honest, I think Crytek considered this, because in the same patch, they're increasing the effective range of compact ammo to try and make it more enticing to use. Now, will this consideration stop me from using compact ammo and medium ammo? No. I have fun with levering once in a while, and I like my Vetterlies. So I'm still going to use it. But as far as your Sweatlords are concerned, and people who care more about full optimization, it certainly takes a lot of compact and medium ammo out of the running. This brings us to the last issue that I would like to discuss, and that centers around the fact that Hunt is an information-driven game. And the Stalker Beetle adds a whole new facet to consider when it comes to gathering information on your opponents. My worry is that this essentially turns the Stalker Beetle into a must-have item every time you go on a bounty hunt. It's on par with bringing a melee tool, medkits, and even choke bombs, which are now, ironically, also more important because of the Stalker Beetle. Otherwise, you simply have to accept, if you don't bring one, that your opponents are simply going to constantly have more information than you do, which is a very steep hill to climb. Combine this with the fact that it has more offensive capability than I believe was intended. If you want to see a prime example of this, I recommend, of course, when you're done here, going over and checking out Rock Disease gameplay tests on the test servers with the Stalker Beetle, and you quickly realize that this thing turns into a ridiculous homing missile. You bring, as mentioned earlier, a Sparks with poison ammo on it, and being that the Beetle is capable of sharing poison sense, so long as your hunter has it, you have a teammate pop somebody with the poison Sparks, and you can see whoever got poisoned throughout the entire flight range of the Beetle, because poison sense now also detects up to 150 meters away, and you simply fly the Beetle into them while they're at 1 HP from a Sparks shot, and they can't heal for a while because they're poisoned. Also, while you're poisoned, as I mentioned before, it makes it harder to see the Beetle and hear it coming. So at this point, getting hit by a poison Sparks, you basically have to run like you've been hit by a flashbang and hope that you can get away and regen enough health that the Beetle isn't going to kill you when it catches up with you, because it will eventually, unless you manage to get out of its range. This also adds to increasing concerns with solo play. While some of these risks can be minimized with teams, obviously someone that gets taken out that way, so long as they also haven't been scouted by the Beetle, can always revive you or, continue the fight on their own, especially now that the enemy team has used a Beetle. Again, this is also assuming they don't have more than one, if this is the strategy they're intending to deploy. But lots of hypotheticals here. But as a solo, this thing worries me a little bit, because if you are playing on your own and you're against a team using a coordinated Poison Sparks Stalker Beetle strategy, it basically getting hit with the Poison Sparks is a death sentence. You are absolutely screwed if you get hit by this, because unless, as stated, you somehow make it out of the range of the Beetle, you're just dead. And whether that be to the Beetle catching up to you, one of their other teammates shooting you, accidentally running by AI and having it take that last bit of HP off of you, so many ways to get screwed in this scenario. And as a solo, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And if they have more Beetles, even if you do get away, now you're injured, scrambling for supplies, trying not to die to your environment, and this team basically always has a bead on where you're at and can relentlessly hunt you down with very little counterplay. And this applies whether or not the poison strategy is being used or not, at least as far as keeping tabs on you. So I would like to see something to help out solo players in this regard. I don't know what that solution is, but I would certainly love to see it in the comments. But my best wishes go out to you solo players. I play by myself once in a while as well. Now, I'd like to end in the spirit of being constructive. I can sit here and talk about the facts and point out risks and concerns until I'm blue in the face, but ultimately it's not going to help with the balancing issues on the Stalker Beetle. So, what can we do to balance our little flying friend? As stated earlier in the video, I don't think it should be capable of blocking extractions. I think that's simply too much for something that's really intended for recon, and extraction campers really don't need another tool to use. On top of this, as far as offensive capabilities, I think it currently can fly, as of this video, a little bit too high to surveil the surrounding area, and this not only provides an extreme amount of information, but also provides for little counterplay. I think the dark sight vision on the Beetle, the range of it needs to be reduced so that it at least has to fly low enough to allow for some sort of counterplay against the Beetle. But as of the making of this video, it can go so far up that it simply can't be detected. This also adds to the issue of getting dive bombed with poison sense if you get poisoned by poison sparks, and at that point it's just going to rain down from above and there's not a whole lot you can do to stop it. In addition to this, I also discovered watching some test server footage that you can in fact have a teammate put a sticky bomb on the Stalker Beetle and turn it into a homing missile. For something that's meant to serve as recon and as a stalemate breaker, I think being able to turn it into a homing missile is ridiculous, quite frankly. Is it hilarious? Absolutely. I think it makes for some great clips, but after a while it's going to be really frustrating to be on the receiving end of something like that, and I think that's simply too much. Now, that's just the beginning of what can be done to help this, and I could go on and on about ways to tweak this, but I think that's a discussion that can be continued in the comments. So please feel free to tell me how you would balance the Stalker Beetle and what your thoughts on it are. But let's try and keep it constructive, please. In the meantime, I appreciate you if you've listened to me drone on for this entire video, and I hope the information I provided is helpful. Once it reaches live servers, I will go into updating what may have changed once it hits live, and some strategies surrounding the Stalker Beetle and its usage. I also have some other series coming up in that same vein. I have some guides coming out. I'm working on a new series called Players Won't Teach It, and I'm actually going to do a video on evasion, and I'm also still continuing things like the signature loadouts, so look forward to those. Again, thank you for sticking around for this video, and I look forward to the discussion in the comments. And I'll see you all on the next one. Good hunting in the bayou, everybody.